Hello YouTube family, it is Andrea here at VW Family Farm, and I am pretty much obsessed right now with bread making. So I'm gonna take you guys along. This is one of my favorite bread recipes of all time, and I have converted it to be used in a bread machine, and I've scaled it down also to make one loaf of bread. So we visited Amish country a few years ago, and I was given this recipe, and since then I have tweaked it, changed a couple of things about it, and pretty much made it my own. And now I'm actually making it in a bread machine. So a few weeks ago I scored a bread machine for next to nothing. You can find those used for people that maybe had aspirations of making bread and then didn't do it, or for whatever reason. You can get a bread machine for very cheap. So let me just make a disclaimer. I also love making bread in the oven. I love doing it that way as well. But for the times that other things have just taken precedent and I don't have time to make sure I do all the steps when they need to be done, the bread machine has been a lifesaver for my commitment to making bread for our family that does not contain ingredients that I don't want and things like that. Now, another disclaimer, this is not a sourdough recipe. I love sourdough. I get lots of sourdough questions every week from videos I've made on YouTube and things like that. I love sourdough, but sometimes my family also just wants a white bread that they call like store-bought. And so I've been experimenting with different recipes. I've actually found 2 or 3 that I love, and this is one of those. So I'm just sharing these with you guys as a good, what I would call compromise bread when you don't want to make sourdough, or you just simply don't have a starter going yet that's strong enough. So let's jump right into it. This is going to be super easy and super delicious. First thing you need is some warm water. Warm tap water will work fine. You can just want it warm but not too incredibly hot, and you want a cup. So to this water we are going to add a 1/4 cup of flour and a 1/4 cup of sugar. I'm going to actually, my form of sugar is going to be some of our crystallized honey. It's a good way to use up honey that has crystallized. You can always heat honey up and get it back to more of a liquid state. You kind of, if you're not careful, you will kill some of the good things out of the honey doing that. So I just tend to use it in cooking and baking if it has turned crystallized. So we're going to add that to our hot water. Okay, last couple of things we are going to add in here is 3/4 teaspoon of salt. This is a teaspoon measure, so I'm just eyeballing that. And Red Star yeast, we're going to add 1 packet, or if you don't buy it by the packet, you could just do 2 teaspoons. I like this yeast, or this, like I said, is Red Star yeast, or you can go with Azure Standard yeast. Both of those are just basic yeast, not a lot of crazy ingredients. I like both of those. So we're gonna add that in. We're just gonna kind of stir that together. You can see in here, I've got everything mixed in here, the flour, the honey, the salt, the yeast, and the water. And I'm not gonna just stir it to death. I've got some flour lumps in here, that's okay. And then we're gonna let this just sit and activate this yeast. So we're gonna walk away for about 5 minutes or so. Okay, so the next thing is, if you're gonna make this in a bread machine, this is one I bought secondhand. It's not new by any means, but it was very inexpensive. I'm gonna do, you can see there's a little code here. I'm gonna do a light colored crust. That's what we prefer. And I'm doing a basic loaf. Your bread machine will be different probably. It probably won't be just like this, but you can see it's already come up 3 hours. That's how long it's gonna take to rise the bread, and then knead it again and rise again and bake it. 3 hours, it will be completely done. I'm gonna put this thing down in the bottom. This is what's gonna mix it. I did not take this out the first time. I actually told y'all about making bread last week, I believe, and told you I'd watched Misty over at the Max, and she actually suggested taking that little spinner out partway through. And I didn't do it, I forgot the first time, and that thing will bake up into your loaf of bread. I suggest figuring out after your bread machine mixes or kneads, I guess you call it technically, for the last time, carefully pick your loaf up and take that out so that doesn't bake up into your bread and tear your loaf apart. And then gently put it back in there and it'll rise on up and it'll be fine. Mine, I'm just gonna tell you for reference, on this model is about an hour and 50-ish or 55 minutes. Then it is done kneading, but it still gives it 45, 50 minutes or so before it starts baking to go ahead and rise back up and take its shape. So that's just a little tip. Let's get this all put together. Okay, so let's add some liquids first down in here. So I'm gonna add 1/8 of a cup of olive oil. You could definitely use butter at this point. I'm gonna add in our bubbly yeast mixture. And so that's gonna be liquid down in the bottom. It'll mix better that way. And I'm gonna actually add 2 1/4 cups more flour. All right, so you can see what it looks like. I'm not gonna mix it up at all. I'm just gonna shut the lid. I'm gonna scoot it back a bit out of my way, and I am going to press start. So you can see it's actually just mixing a little bit. You would think if you've never done this before, like that is never gonna get all that mixed up just doing that with that little bitty paddle, but it will, I promise. So I don't know how well y'all can see it, but you can see it's pulled all the flour away from the sides. It's mixed it up really well. And then you'll hear it stop off and on, and then it will start mixing again. So just leave it alone. Some advice y'all gave me even was don't open it. So don't open it unless you're trying to take that paddle out, and then of course you have to. Just leave it alone, let it do its thing. But remember, sometime after the last kneading, take the paddle out, let it do its final rise. So that's the beauty of this, you can walk away. So I'm gonna walk away and we will see what it looks like later. Very carefully, mine is at the time I need to take out that paddle. So you can see it's starting to do its final rise. I'm just gonna be very gentle with it. Take the paddle out, and I'm just gonna gently put this back. And you're gonna make it fall a little bit, but you can see I didn't do too much damage. I'm gonna pop this back in here. And let it do its thing. Like I said, that's about an hour and 45 minutes. That final hour is baking time. So your model's gonna be different, but you can imagine if this bakes up into your loaf of bread, it will even cover this almost. How difficult that's gonna be to get that out without just tearing your loaf all to pieces. So look how beautiful this turned out. It rose perfectly. I actually took it out last night and cooled it on a rack. And now it's perfectly good and cool because it's been all night. And we are going to get this cut up. Now I like to do this on a cookie sheet because it contains any crumbs that might fall. This is by far my softest loaf of sandwich bread I have made. That is why I like this. I think it's gonna be one of our favorite recipes. So I'm gonna use this electric knife. This is just a cheap fillet knife from Walmart. It helps you get more even, uniform slices without tearing it all up. You can definitely just use a manual bread knife as well. And that is so soft and spongy. This is like the closest to store-bought I've made so far. How beautiful is that? And that's one thing I like about the electric knife. I can get it pretty thin. Then that cuts down on how many calories is in each piece if you're concerned about that. So I'm gonna leave this half of the loaf unsliced. I just think that it keeps better if I don't slice it all at once. So I'm gonna do that. I love these bread bags. Let me mention that. I just get these at Walmart. They're great value brand. This is actually what the box looks like. They're just called twist tie bags, and you'll see a picture of bagels on there. They are perfect, inexpensive bread sacks. So that's it. That is a perfect winter recipe. I don't think if you make that you will be disappointed. And a bread machine is by far not required, but it sure does make things easier. So I encourage you guys, if you want to, give this a try. We can all do just little steps to get better ingredients into our families and into our food. And I just feel like homemade bread is one of those things for me. It's a simple thing that I can do, and it just honestly for me feels like taking charge of another aspect of our food system for me. So, and that feels pretty good. So I'll see you guys on the next one. Recipe will definitely be down in the description, and then you can use the instructions however you see fit. However, if you want to use a bread machine or not, you can alter it based on that. So if you don't use the bread machine, let me just put a little plug in there. It's gonna rise, and then you're gonna need to punch it back down and knead it a little bit, probably a couple times throughout it, and you will just have to keep an eye on how long that takes you each time. And then I would bake it at about 350, probably for close to an hour. Just watch your crust color as it starts to get done so you don't burn it or get it too hard. I'll see you guys on the next one. God bless.